Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a full face of drugstore makeup, specifically my #1 favorite drugstore makeup at the moment. These are all of my current favorites. I find myself reaching for them over and over again. But before we get into it, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it, and let's get into it. I'm going to do some eyeshadow first, so I'm going to prep my lids with the Milani eyeshadow primer. This is just the best affordable eyeshadow primer that I've tried. I'm going to cheat just a little bit and use two eyeshadow palettes today. So this one is an all matte palette. This is the Milani Gilded Mini in Whiskey Business. And this is an all matte neutral palette. So I like to use this one with other palettes that might not have all the mattes that I need. And I'm going to be using that with the Essence Bronze This Way eyeshadow palette. This one doesn't have as many matte shades in it, so I do like to reach for the Milani palette when I'm using this one. It just helps to complete the look. So I've been loving both of these together. So I'm going to take this one and this one right here from the Milani Gilded Mini. So I'm dipping back and forth between those two shades, and I'm applying that in the crease. These shadows are really nice and pigmented, and they do blend out nicely. It pretty much has everything you need as far as a neutral matte palette. I'm going to be doing more of a fall look because I don't think I've done like a proper fall makeup look on my channel, and we are almost in the middle of November, so I figured it was time to do a proper fall makeup look, and these two palettes I feel like are perfect for achieving that. And then taking a little bit of this shade right here, I'm going to use that to tone down the eyeshadow because I went in with a little bit more than I was planning. This shade barely shows up on me, but it does help to diffuse the other shadows. So now dipping into the Essence palette, I'm going to take this shade right here, which is a matte brick red. I'm going to apply that to the outer corner and bringing a little bit into the crease. And I'm slowly building up that shade. I'm going to blend out the crease a little bit more. And then on a smaller brush, I'm going to take the deep brown in the palette and applying that right over top on the outer corner. And then again, buffing around the edges. I like to do this after almost every shade that I apply on the lids. Like even if I'm applying an outer corner shade, I like to take my fluffy blending brush and buff around the edges. It kind of just helps to make everything look nice and seamless. And then after I do that, I like to also tap over the outer corner again. So not applying any additional shadow, just tapping over it. I'm going to take this shimmer right here from the Bronze This Way palette, and I always forget that these shades have names. I don't know why, but I think it's just because they're so tiny on the back of the palette. But the shimmer that I'm using is Perfect Babe, so applying that with my finger. These aren't the most pigmented shimmers I've ever tried, but they do give a decent amount of pigment, and I just like the way that they look on the lids. These to me are like a soft metallic. So now I'm just taking my fluffy blending brush and buffing over the edges. I'm going to line my upper lash line with the deepest matte in the Milani palette, pressing that onto my lash line. So let's go ahead and work on complexion next. This is still my go-to primer. This is the e.l.f. Power Grip Primer with 4% niacinamide. I love that it's lightly hydrating and it really does grip onto makeup. So applying that to mainly the center of my face and blending it outwards. So now I just let it set for about 30 seconds to a minute. And in the meantime, I'm going to mix up my foundation. For foundation, I'm going to be using the Maybelline Superstay 24 Hour Skin Tint. This one has vitamin C, and I'm going to be mixing two shades. This one is 118, which is a little bit light for me, and I'll be mixing it with the shade 220. This one is too deep for me. So my only complaint about this foundation is that I can't find a good match for me, so I do have to mix both of those. But I do like the coverage that it gives. I would say it's medium to buildable coverage, so I can get it to look almost like full coverage. And the finish is really pretty. It looks natural with a hint of glow. So I'm applying that with my Real Techniques foundation brush. And I like to do one half of my face at a time, not because this foundation dries down too quickly, but I feel like I just get a more seamless finish. I do wish they had a better shade range so that I wouldn't have to mix two shades, because it's just not ideal, and most people are not going to want to purchase two shades of this foundation even though it is affordable. So hopefully they do expand their shade range in the future, because I really love this skin tint. And then pressing a little bit more into certain areas where I have some redness peeking through, so usually on my cheeks. Now I'm taking my beauty sponge and pressing over the foundation. For concealer, I'm going to be using the NYX Bear With Me Concealer Serum, and this is in the shade Beige. This is such a nice, lightweight concealer, and I was kind of surprised at how much coverage this has. I would say this has medium coverage, but it just looks so pretty and skin-like. So tapping that out with my brush, and this is a BK Beauty Nikki LaRose N14 brush. I'm also cleaning up the edges of the eyeshadow with that. And then taking my sponge and further pressing it in. For cream bronzer, I'm going to be applying the Milani Cheek Kiss Cream Bronzer in the shade Hey Honey. This to me feels like a high-end cream bronzer. It's blendable and it's pigmented but not too pigmented, so it's just very easy to work with. I'm going to apply that with my e.l.f. Complexion Duo brush, and this brush is another favorite. I love applying cream bronzer with this. This shade was a little bit too light for me in the summer, but I still managed to make it work because it is buildable. So ideally I could have gone up one more shade, but I just love the undertone of this one. This reminds me a little bit of the Tower 28 Sculptino. I feel like it has a very similar consistency and finish, but this one I would say is not quite as emollient. The one from Tower 28 is more hydrating, I would say, whereas this one has a soft matte finish, but they are very comparable in my opinion. And then applying some to the sides of my nose. And then tapping over that with my sponge. I'm going to set my under eyes with the e.l.f. finishing powder in the shade Fair/Light. I just can't stop using this powder for my under eyes. I took a bit of a break from it because I was trying some other powders, but every time I go back to this one, I remember why I love it so much. It just brightens up the under eyes really nicely. It's lightweight and it just sets the concealer beautifully. And then for the rest of my face, I'm going to use a different powder. This is the Beauty Bakerie Flower Setting Powder in the shade Oat Translucent. And this one, I had stopped using it for a while, but I've been back to using it. And it's just such a good translucent setting powder. I don't know that this is technically drugstore, but you can find it at Target. At least at my local Target, I have seen it there, so it's drugstore to me. And I love this packaging because it does have a cover on the sifter. So when you're done with it, you can just close it up and it doesn't make a mess. This is something that I feel like some other powders need, but this is a really finely milled powder. This might be a little bit more mattifying than the Makeup by Mario setting powder. I haven't compared them side by side, but I think this one is slightly more mattifying. Definitely not dupe though. This one does have talc in it, whereas the Makeup by Mario one doesn't. But I like both of them. This is just a really nice drugstore alternative. Okay, super exciting. I just finished doing my brows off camera and I completely ran through the e.l.f. Ultra Precise Brow Pencil in the shade Cool Brown. This is my go-to brow pencil lately and I definitely need to restock that. I topped it with the e.l.f. Wow Brow Gel in the shade Deep Brown. So this has been my go-to brow combo. But let's go ahead and finish up the lower lash line. So I'm going to take that matte brick red shade from the Essence palette, and this one is called Love Yourself. I'm going to mix these three middle matte shades from the Milani Gilded Mini palette, and I'm going to use that to buff out that first shade. And then cleaning off that brush on a color switch, I'm going to apply the shade No Mistakes from the Essence palette. So pressing that onto the outer corner, and I'm connecting it with the outer corner of the lid. And then lightly buffing it out. And then taking the shade Perfect Babe, which is the shade that I used on the lid, I'm going to press that on the inner portion of the lower lash line and buffing it in about halfway. And then for the inner corners, I'm taking Superstar, which is that light gold. It's not super brightening, so I might go over it with an actual highlighter, but I do like that pop of gold. I'm gonna go in with a powder bronzer, and this is the e.l.f. Primer Infused Matte Bronzer in the shade 10 O'Clock, and this is one of the newer shades that they came out with. They also redid the packaging. It looks very similar, but this one is, I think, a little bit smaller. Okay, they're really close in size, but the new one is just a little bit smaller, but the product itself is pretty much the same. I haven't noticed any differences. They did expand their shade range. They have some deeper shades now. This is a really long wearing powder bronzer, and it applies so smoothly. I know they say it's a matte bronzer, but I don't think it's completely matte. I do see a tiny bit of a glow, but this is one of my favorite powder bronzers. And I am glad that they expanded their shade range because they didn't have a lot of shades for a while. I think they only had like 2 or 3, but they have a lot more now. And then for blush, I'm going to apply the Wet n Wild Color Icon blush in the shade Naked Brown. And this to me is the perfect everyday powder blush for the fall. It's a pinky brown and it has a really pretty satin finish. It's buildable as well. So popping that onto the cheeks. And this brush is my #1 favorite powder blush brush at the moment. This is the Morphe A22 brush, and it's just the perfect size and shape for applying powder blush. It helps me apply it in a more controlled way, and I feel like my blush looks more diffused when I apply it with this. I think it's because the bristles are loosely packed, so it doesn't apply a lot of blush at a time. And then taking my powder brush, I didn't apply any more powder, but I'm just using it to buff out everything. I'm gonna apply the Milani Make It Last setting spray. I thought I had a few more weeks left of this setting spray, but I think I'm gonna run out of it in the next couple of days because I've been using it a ton. So now I can apply my Clio Kill Lash Superproof Mascara, and this is the volume and curling version. This one is starting to dry out on me. I think I've had it for exactly 3 months, so it's definitely time to replace it, but it's still working out pretty well. I love how curling this one is, and it does not budge. There's no flaking, no smudging. This is one of the best wearing mascaras that I've ever tried. It truly is waterproof, because I've tried a lot of mascaras that claim to be waterproof, and they're not. At least they're not on me. I'm going to tightline my upper lash line with the Milani Stay Put eyeliner in the shade Semi Sweet. I stopped doing this for a while because it does feel pretty uncomfortable, but I feel like it really makes a difference. So I've started doing this again almost every time I do my makeup. And then this one isn't necessarily a favorite, but I have been enjoying it. I figured this would go really well with this look. This is the About Face Line Artist Pencil in the shade Birds of Paradise. So it's like a mustardy yellow eyeliner. I'm gonna apply it to my waterline. It's not super pigmented, so I do have to go over it a few times, but it looks really pretty. I don't always like to apply a powder highlighter, not as much as I used to, but whenever I do, I like to reach for the Revlon Skin Lights Prismatic Highlighter. And this one is in the shade Daylight Glimmer, which is a really pretty gold. So I'm applying that with this Real Techniques setting brush and popping that onto the high points of my face. Look at how pretty that looks. It's just such a pretty champagne gold. I'm also putting some down the bridge of my nose and on my Cupid's bow. And I always apply some up here, so right above my brow. I'm also gonna add some to the inner corners. I wanted something brighter. And the gold shade is pretty, but it just wasn't bright enough for me. These Maybelline Lifter lip liners have been my go-to as far as the drugstore. And this one is in the shade 05 On It, which is the perfect neutral nude lip liner shade. So I'm actually gonna sharpen that first because I've been using it a ton lately. And then I like to blend it out with my finger before it completely dries down. And these do dry down pretty quickly, but I have a little bit of time to buff it out. So I can't decide between these two lip products, both from e.l.f. This one is the e.l.f. O-Face Satin Lipstick in the shade Drive. And this is a pinky brown. So I don't know if I want to do this one or the lip oil in the shade Honey Talks. I don't know if I want to do a satin lipstick or a lip oil today, but this satin lipstick is so high quality. I love the pigment and it's a beautiful satin finish on the lips. And then the lip oil, super hydrating and comfortable. So I don't know what I want to do today. Maybe I'll add a little bit of the lipstick and then see if I want to top it with the lip oil. So I'm going to tap it on. Okay, I love this combo for this eye look, but I think I do want a little bit of that lip oil on top. So I'm gonna add a little bit of the shade Honey Talks. And once again, blending that out with my finger because I don't want too much pigment. All right, so those are all of my top favorite makeup products at the moment. I am always rotating through my products, so I try not to use the same things over and over again, but honestly, it's kind of hard to do that because once I find something that I like to stick with it. So I hope you guys don't mind me using products over and over again, but let me know in the comments down below what some of your favorite drugstore products are right now, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.